Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul. Hopefully you're having an amazing day. This video is going to be quite interesting because we're not only going to be discussing RTX 30 stock, but also possible refreshes of RDNA 2 as well as RTX 30. But first, just a quick word from this video's sponsor. If you're running a copy of Windows 10 which isn't activated, of course, not only do you have to worry about the missing customization options, but there's also that annoying Windows desktop watermark reminding you to activate. Today's video is sponsored by whokeys.com, and they have an excellent price on Windows 10 Professional as well as Home keys. Yeah, and they also of course sell games. I've bought a few Windows 10 keys with my own personal account to test everything was legit and worked in preparation for this sponsored video. You can pick up one of their keys for 25% off using the coupon code RGT in the checkout. There's links to their website in the video description. Also, if you're building a few systems, there's bundles available too. Again, you can check out whokeys.com and use the coupon code RGT for 25% off the listed Windows 10 key prices. So let's start things out with RDNA 2's refresh. There's a very interesting tweet that Grayman has tweeted. I'll link it in the video description. They state that Nave 34 is rather different from its bigger brothers. 34 is almost certainly an RDNA 2 refresh, and it's built using the TSMC 6nm process. Now we do know that 31 and 33, for example, do have major differences. We've discussed these ad nauseum, so I'll just go over the most obvious one right off the bat. 33 is monolithic, and 31 is, well, not. It's essentially chiplets with 6nm chips being used for the cache, and the GCDs, basically the work group processors, the shaders, or the things that actually make graphics go brr if you prefer, those are built using TSMC's 5nm process. So for RDNA 2 and its refresh then, it's quite interesting because we've been hearing an awful lot about, you know, RTX 30 refresh and also RDNA 2. So it makes you wonder whether the RDNA 2 refresh is first going to come to mobile, because that's been the rumor for a while. I believe it's Cope87 Kimmy as well as Grayman have stated this, but I might be misattributing one of the credits. I can't be 100%. And also we've been hearing that Nvidia might also release an RTX 30 refresh as well, at least for desktop. Now I've been doing some digging of my own, and I've spoken to several sources, and there's a very interesting thing. Now, as of the time I'm recording this video, and obviously this can change tomorrow, to my understanding Nvidia has not yet briefed its AIB partners to an RTX 30 refresh for desktop. Now you have to remember that these timelines can be pretty fast. Nvidia doesn't necessarily like to give, let's say, MSI or Zotac or EVGA or whomever, they don't like to give them any more notice than what's absolutely necessary for, well, exact reason of what we're talking about in this video, leaks. But it does tell me that, you know, when you consider the run-up time and the build time and all of the stuff that basically comes to actually forming a GPU, I don't think we're going to be seeing an RTX 30 refresh for desktop anytime soon. And this also, again, to my knowledge, seems to extend to AMD as well. So there's a very interesting question then. What exactly is going to be the timelines, and will we actually see an RTX 30 refresh for desktop? You know, I'm not 100%. I think it's possible for mobile, but for desktop it's quite interesting because we've also seen, of course, an awful lot that basically mass production of the RTX 40 series, Lovelace, is probably going to start around the midpoint of next year. And this makes sense. Again, it does take a while for these GPUs to not only enter mass production, but then for them to start shipping. So I personally don't think we're going to see RTX 40 cards at best until end of Q3, possibly Q4. An RTX 40 is going to be a lot faster. But again, just to quickly go over my point here, I'm hearing absolutely no solid details of an RTX 30 refresh for desktop. And this brings me to the next point, and this is regarding availability of RTX 30 cards. Now, the good news is that availability in general has been getting better. I'm sure many of you have noticed it, and I've kind of been, you know, doing a little bit of checking here or there. And this is certainly region dependent. This will also, of course, vary on the e-tailers or retailers you have available close to you. And there's also, it depends, some regions seem to have a ton of AMD stock, others seem to do better with Nvidia, and so on and so on. But generally speaking, Nvidia do seem to be doing better for inventory at the moment. And I've been told the RTX 3060 cards are probably going to be getting a really big restock pretty soon. Now, this actually comes off the back of several months ago when I was told the RTX 3060 Ti cards were going to be really boosted in their inventory levels. Now they were. The problem was, of course, that, well, at least according to my information at the time, the first problem was just that the demand was so damn high, Nvidia could have quite literally quadrupled the output of their cards, and it really wouldn't have mattered. It's just like, you know, if the Titanic is sinking and I give you 4 buckets rather than 1 to bail, okay, I'm helping. But yeah, in that case, obviously there were just shortages. Plus, also to my knowledge, a lot of the 3060 Ti cards, at least from what I was told at that specific time, I believe it was June I put this video out, I could be wrong. But yeah, back then, basically, a lot of those cards were going to, you know, internet cafes, especially in China. Now, these cards, the 3060s, I'm hearing is going to be quite a large number. Basically, Nvidia have looked into their back pocket and freeing up a significant amount of inventory. So I've heard 2 explanations as to why this is. The first, and it's probably the reason that Nvidia would prefer you to think, and that is that just in terms of how long it takes to build cards and reach higher capacity and just all of the shortages, this stuff takes time to ramp up. And so basically we're now starting to hit the point where shortages are no longer quite as, well, sure. So Nvidia now can start to flood the market with more cards. The second explanation I've had, because this has been told to me by 2 different sources, was that the actual reason is because basically Nvidia were holding back cards for the 6600 XT launch. Essentially, Nvidia did not expect AMD to be able to produce and have as many 6600 XTs on shelves as what they ended up having. Now, yeah, I will say that while the 6600 XT was a little more expensive than perhaps many hoped, although you can argue with the prices in the market at the moment anyway, well, you know what, that's a whole story. But ultimately, Nvidia were not expecting the number of 6600 XTs they had to contend with, so they're basically freeing up inventory and now starting to try and push those onto the shelves. And I honestly don't know which of them is true. I personally am probably leaning towards explanation number 2, because I think Nvidia were kind of building up their inventory and just kind of waiting because they didn't want to just flood the market with tons of cards. They probably wanted to do it slower just because of, you know, retailers and prices and all of that stuff. So it's a very interesting situation we're in. Now, this probably means that availability of the RTX 3060 is going to get a lot better, possibly the Ti as well, as it's not too much out of the price range of the 6600 XT. Now, as for the timing of this, I'm hearing it's going to be in the next couple of weeks that this is really going to start to take place. And it'll be very interesting to me if this is actually true, to see how it actually affects the market and the pricing. Obviously, it does take quite a while for prices to adjust. And certain cards like the RTX 3080 are still just like gold dust. Like, you can get the 3090, I was going to say easy, but that's not quite strictly true, but it's not as difficult. And the RTX 3070 seems reasonable-ish to get, but the RTX 3080 and the 3080 Ti, those 2 cards seem really difficult at the moment to get. Let me know if your experiences are any different there. Also, just one final quick thing. Kopity7 Kimi has stated that they believe that the Intel GPUs will have very strong performance. Now, Intel Arc, of course, has recently been formally announced by the company, and I have to say that the main thing that I was surprised about with Intel Arc, other than the fact that the announcement almost seemed to come out of nowhere, which I personally think the best announcements generally do, was just how strong, at least according to Intel, their upsampling solution is, which again is apparently based on machine learning / AI. Now, there was an awful lot of different explanations as to the performance of Intel DG2, or the artist formerly known as Intel DG2. And it's going to be interesting to me what the final performance numbers are for this. I've personally heard everything from RTX 3060 Ti at the best case scenario, all the way up to maybe the 3080 level. The problem is that there seems to be a lot of confusion of whether those performance numbers were referring to the mobile or the desktop segment for me. And, you know, I will say that Copati, generally speaking, does have pretty good sources, although they haven't really stated what those performance numbers are. So is it encoding performance? Is it gaming performance? Is it gaming performance with upsampling going on? You know, and also there are other things too, like if you have a graphics architecture which is bandwidth starved, for example, you can have really good, let's say 1440p performance, but when you move to, let's say 4K, things can just, well, the wheels just fall off. So I'll be very interested to see exactly what Intel can bring to the fray here. I think, if nothing else, having a third player in the market will... I'm hoping it will at the very least help to balance things, because, you know, I've said this before, but if you have, let's say, AMD on top the next generation, let's just say RDNA 3 is much better than Lovelace. Let's say that it's competitively priced, it's faster, it's more power efficient, it's reasonably similar in ray tracing performance, and so on and so on. Then, you know, it's great that you have a really good product, but it's just as sucky as if Nvidia was on top, you know? Like, for example, going back a bit to Pascal, you know, the 1080 or the 1080 Ti, like they were amazing cards, but it was also kind of boring to know that no matter what build guide you were following, no matter what review you were looking at, ultimately most folks would recommend a specific card for a specific budget. And I'm hoping that we'll get more balance and more competitiveness in the market because of this. At the very least, it might help to alleviate shortages. Although, of course, those shortages will also depend on things like what process Intel is actually building the GPUs on, and other things like just general inventory supply. I personally, though, think that Intel will do pretty good with the supply issues of their cards, although it'll be interesting whether they do actually target the desktop simultaneous to mobile, because again, I'm hearing it's going to be mobile first. With that said, thank you very much for checking out the video. If you've enjoyed it, you know what to do. Leave a likey on the video because it is YouTube land. Also, if you want to subscribe and click the bell icon because, well, again, it's YouTube land, that would be amazing. I'll see you soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.